Welcome to the Emergency Traffic Podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the Emergency Traffic Podcast. We're here doing another Tailboard talk. Today we're all meeting live, so it'll be a new show for us. We're going to talk about Quints today, and I'm sure it'll get a little lively because there's some differing opinions. Before we get going, though, I just want to tell everybody, make sure you follow us on Twitter at Podcast Traffic. We're on Facebook at Emergency Traffic Podcast. We're now on Instagram at Emergency Traffic Pod. And you can give us some feedback at emergencytrafficpodcast@gmail.com. So I'm joined today with Paul and Dirk. I'm Doug, of course. Paul, letting us use your house. How's it going?
Hey, awesome. It's fun to get together in person instead of doing it over the Facebook or FaceTime or whatever we use. So it's kind of cool to sit back here on the deck. Hopefully the backyard's kind of quiet for an hour. We can talk about Quints. Of course, with my background in selling fire trucks, I'm passionate about Quints. Sold lots of them. So otherwise, I'm good. And it's a sunny day, Victoria Day here in Canada.
Yeah, beautiful.
I never knew that about you. You were selling fire trucks? That must be a first time you mentioned that.
Yeah, he never mentioned
You
it.
never mentioned that before.
Yeah,
Hi, guys.
Yeah. Dirk's voice is a little raspy today. He was screaming at the Oiler game last night where we kicked Calgary's ass, so that was good. Hey, Dirk.
Big game. Yeah. So I apologize in advance.
You just wanted to get that in there.
Oh, I got to get that in
Of
there.
course
For
he
sure.
does.
Yeah,
Of course he does. Yeah, of course he does.
So we're got a guest host today, being joined by Zach, who is helping us with some audio techie stuff, and also a member of the fire service. Spent some time in the fire department with myself and Paul. So welcome, Zach.
Happy to be here, guys. Yeah. So I'm just gonna be helping out with the intro and helping Paul out when his age starts to show when we're dealing with the podcast here. Just was finished helping him out with his brand new phone. He couldn't figure out how to access his notes, so I had to show Dad there where it was.
I remember helping you guys. I can't get my active 911 number. I can't get my responding. You guys are the young people.
Well, they grew up.
Yeah, we grew up now. Now we're helping you.
Oh yeah. Well, Quint.
Hold on, everybody.
What's a Quint? I know what a Quint is. It's a triple combination pumper with an aerial ladder, and I'm drawing a blank.
You had such confidence
Yeah,
going
I
into
did.
that.
I thought it was a quintessential fire truck.
85 feet of ground ladder. So there you go.
So in the olden days, triple combination pumper, pump, tank, and ground, and then a quad, which was a pump, tank, hose bed, and some ladders.
Yeah, just no aerial. Often called a city service ladder.
Right. Yeah. Pump, tank, hose bed, ladders, and an aerial being a Quint. They started out way back the snorkels by telesquirt. Did the 50, 65, 75 foot telesquirts, which is basically a closed block beam boom with a ground ladder bolted to the top. And small communities bought a lot of those. Elevated water master stream device really is what it was, although there's a lot of debate about the rating of the ladder on what do you test the ladder to on a telesquirt. E1 had a teleboom. There was fire sticks by Boardman. There was another one. I can't remember all the different brands. And that's really because you couldn't put a full-size aerial or a snorkel articulating platform on a truck with a pump and a tank and a ladder. So in the old days, that's what they had. And then it sort of evolved into 75-foot ladders, which is the Quints that many of you are familiar with. A lot of little cities in rural North America buy a single axle 75-foot Quint to protect their communities, and could be 55, 65, 75 feet. And then later on, started doing Quints with on 100-foot ladders and platforms with Quints. And there's even some tiller Quints, which are often called quillers.
Quillers, yeah.
Usually they're a tandem because the water tank puts some overweight for the single rear axle. See a few of those in California, quillers.
I think maybe Seattle. Maybe.
I don't think so.
Could be wrong, yeah.
I thought they call them trengens.
Engines? No, I don't
Or
know.
the ladder with a bladder.
Ladder with the bladder. There it is.
the debate became more popular in around 2000, the late 90s, early 2000s. And there was a fire chief in St. Louis, Missouri, named Neil Savantics. And St. Louis was in rough times. Apparatus was old. City was maybe declining, having staffing issues and apparatus and purchase budget issues and stuff like that. And him and another guy, and I can't remember the other guy's name, formed a company called Quint Concepts. I couldn't find it still in operation, but Quint Concepts. And they did studies that showed that if you bought Quints, so every engine had an aerial device of some sort.
Well, yeah, for a while there, St. Louis did the total Quint concept.
Total Quint concept.
Every vehicle was a Quint, the whole city.
Chief Neil Savantics.
And I think they maybe had one heavy rescue or something.
Right.
But the rest was everything was
big ladders, some were 55s or 70s.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I don't even know if they had big ones, but I know.
Yeah, they still had.
Did they? I know
they
had.
Might not have been a Quint though.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I kind of became aware of the total Quint concept when they were going away from the total Quint concept.
Yeah.
Back to traditional engines. Although I think in St. Louis, all their ladders are still Quints.
Could be.
Because I think, but they have engine companies. I think now they have engine companies, which is an engine with a traditional engine, what they call a truck company, which is the smaller Quint, the hook and ladder, which is the 100-foot.
Big
but
ladder.
I think it's still a Quint.
Yeah.
I think. And then they have one or two heavy rescues now.
I always thought it was a good idea to have the ladder on engines just because it gives you that extra option. It's, the Swiss Army knife of fire trucks, if you will. You've got your regular pumper, tank, hose bed, ground ladders, and even if you only have the third, I think they changed, because originally you had to be a full ladder truck, you have to have 114 feet of ground ladders. Then they reduced it to 85 feet. And then if you only have 35 or 45 feet of ground ladders, your basic two section and your roof. And so, you had a 55-foot ladder. I sold quite a few of the snorkels and the telebooms on a pump. I like the mid-mount teleboom because it didn't take away from the back of the truck. Typically, a rear-mounted telescopic device takes away from the hose bed a lot. But the mid-mounted, all you had was a 4-inch post, and the hose bed was normal. And then the pump module was just a little bit bigger for a ladder to crawl up the side to get to the turntable, and the controls were right at the pump panel. And I sold quite a few of those. And I put some 500-watt lights on the tip, and of course the waterway. And you could have a connection, so you could put a standpipe line like through the third floor balcony or something like that. So that's kind of what I did. During the St. Louis time, Richmond, Virginia was also big with Quints, as was Syracuse, New York. Syracuse actually did it differently. They did a Quint and a midi pumper.
I think Richmond did that too.
Yeah, so it was a Quint, and then a midi pumper would go with it. And the midi pumper was, what today we see as an F550. They didn't have those before 2000 or about 2000 or so. And it was a little bit bigger truck. E1 was famous actually in Grumman for their C65 Chevy, C70 Chevy with a 1,000 GPM pump, 300 gallons of water, little short maneuverable truck, and they called them midi pumpers. It's bigger than a mini, but yeah. Unions were quite concerned with Quints when they came in, as it's potentially a staffing reduction tactic. If you only have 4 guys on an engine and you had 4 guys on your ladder, and now you're going to have maybe 6 on the Quint max, then you've lost some positions, which is important. We all know the importance of having lots of guys at the scene when you arrive. So that became an issue. In fact, what was it? Chief Mittendorf, he shredded this the loss of truck work, because they're not focused on truck work, rescue, ventilation, forcible entry, all that stuff.
But that's more for the big cities, right? Where they actually have engine companies, truck companies, rescue companies. But for the smaller departments, it kind of made sense to have everything in one because I only have to buy one truck.
Right, and that's sort of where we sold a lot of trucks. Look around here, every little town had a 75-foot or a 65-foot Quint of some sort that they used to respond to calls. But not every. The big thing was, like St. Louis, was every truck had a ladder on it.
I think around here, it wasn't so much the Quint concept. It was that we need an aerial device and we can get another pump with it.
Right.
Because they didn't replace their pumpers or their engines with Quints. It was, well, I guess Lacombe did. They got rid of a pump and got a 100-foot tower ladder.
Yeah.
Right.
But I'm thinking Pinoca, they had a smaller Quint, Teleboom or whatever it's
Right.
called, Telesquirt, whatever.
5-foot Tailboard.
But they also had their own, still two engines.
Right.
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 So it was just their way of getting. They probably couldn't afford in 1990 a full 100-foot aerial
Right.
ladder. So this was their way of getting something.
And
And you could argue in these smaller towns, you don't need 100-foot
Right.
area. You have 3-story buildings,
Well,
really, right?
And originally, you didn't see a lot of 100-foot aerial, full-size aerial,
Mhm.
with a pump and tank and
Mhm.
hose bed and ground ladders because the truck gets big. In fact, Chief Mittendorf called them the Carnival Cruise Lines of fire trucks. You know, you get a big cab, a big generator, hose bed, tank, everything in these trucks, and you have them, they're all over the place. These long, 50-foot long aerial platforms with a pump and tank. And,
Yeah.
and the cities in Western Canada here, Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver, Winnipeg, they're all, they're big. And that's maybe taken away from that whole truck company concept in that, and traditionally cities didn't buy a pump on a ladder because it takes up space. It's not a ton of money more when you're buying a $500,000 truck in the day to spend 50 grand or 60 grand on a pump and tank and hose bed, but it takes away compartment space,
And it's
which
weight,
is the truck's
and in
weight,
weight,
and
the
it's
pump, the tank, and most tanks like that. That's kind of like what I don't like about them is we want to look at them as an engine, but with like 300 gallons.
Right.
There's
What are you going to do with it?
maybe a car
A
fire,
car fire.
right?
Mhm.
Exactly.
But by the
That's all
time
have
you
to do with
charge your waterway, the tank's half empty.
Well, yeah,
There's
and
really nothing.
the
Absolutely.
tank's not for the
No,
ladder.
no.
The tank is
Yeah.
so that it can
Yeah.
put a car fire or a
But
dumpster fire.
it does add 1.2 tons of weight
Right.
to it, right? If you
Right.
don't use it, then it's kind of a waste.
Right.
And you look at the size.
Sorry, go ahead.
And you look at the size of the pumps that they're putting on these Quints now, right? Like they're 1,500, but lots of them are 2,000 GPM pumps, right? Like they're
Right.
massive pumps, and so you're gonna burn through that tank in no time at all.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You need a water supply.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
before you're pumping.
Absolutely.
Before you're
And the thing that my gripe about it is these big cities, like you said, Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver, Winnipeg, they already have 25 or 30 engines. They don't need more on a ladder. It's easy to just say, okay, this ladder needs to flow water. We'll give it a pump to pump it. Where in a smaller town, you might not have that extra engine to only be dedicated to flow a ladder. But I just think it's a waste of. I think, like whoever you said there, the truck company work is suffering because everybody's so worried about we have water, we have hose, it's going fire attack.
Right.
And I just don't think we don't. Some cities and towns and departments that are smaller need a jack of all trades truck because volunteer department maybe only getting 6 people showing up for the call.
Mhm.
But a big city, you don't need jack of all trades because you have engines, you can have ladders, and they can both do their own jobs. And I'm not a huge fan of jack of all trades trucks. But
You're
going
always sacrificing something.
away from Quints a little bit, more and more cities are putting more stuff on their engines.
Right.
They're all becoming rescue engines
Right.
now, and
Right.
they're basically a Quint without a ladder on it, right?
And engines are
It's
getting
it's I am a big fan of engine work, truck work. Set your rigs up to do those jobs.
big. I remember when Calgary bought their first aerial with a pump, and I don't know if it was an all Smeel deal or a Superior deal. I think it was an all Smeel or a Pierce or something like that. And that was their first, and it was very controversial. Why are you buying a pump on this truck? Is it a truck or is it an engine? How many people are going to be on it? All that kind of stuff. And now, in the past 15 years, I'd say from 2005 or so, most of the ladder trucks I've seen in Western Canada are Quints. 100-foot aerial platforms, 100-foot ladders are Quints.
So
What's
if
happened?
what I'm thinking is that the chiefs use the pump as an argument to put 4 firefighters on that rig instead of just running it as an area with 2, an officer and a driver. Now we have the capabilities of doing fire attack.
Right.
We need 2 more guys.
Yeah.
So now we buy these, and maybe the chief just told the politicians, "Hey, this is all we get now. This
Right.
is."
Well, it
this
depends
is
what
the
city you're
capacity
in,
out,
though, right?
But we need 4 guys on it. So
Right.
that way we bumped up staffing level, which is great. Makes the fire run safer. Right?
The other difference, I think, between Western Canada and the traditional East Coast, even West Coast United States, is we don't have like a dedicated task for a company.
Mm-hmm.
We have companies that show up and get put to work doing whatever's needed at the time, right?
Mhm.
And so I think they justify, well, we can get this truck, it can fight a fire by itself. It doesn't need a pump, blah, blah, blah. But I know Calgary's next aerial order is back to no pump, no water on
Was
it.
that right?
Mhm.
I think they're getting 4 or 5.
But they're riding only 2 guys on it, right?
Yeah, but they didn't
Right.
switch to 4
They
on a
were
Quint.
always
They've
on.
always been 2. But they want to go to 4 on, they call them aerials.
Right.
And they're getting no pump, no.
Well, the argument always was, what do we need another pump for? If it's an urban center,
Mhm.
in order to get 1710 manning for whatever the call is,
Mhm.
we need 5 or 6 pumps
Yeah.
to come.
Mhm.
Why do we have a pump on the ladder?
Yeah.
Right? We don't need it. We got lots of pumps. Now, if you're in Lacombe or wherever, small
Totally
city,
different story.
Winkler,
Mhm.
Manitoba, I sold them a 100-foot aerial Quint years ago. It's like, yeah, they don't have that many pumps, and if they are, they're coming mutual aid after the first 3 or 4. Then sure, might as well put a pump on the ladder. But if you're in a big city typical big city, you're going to get at least 4 to 6 pumps on a commercial structure. Fire for a house fire, you're going to get 3 or 4. So you don't need a pump and tank and hose on the ladder.
The other thing is on the small departments, there's no spare truck. So
Right.
when your engine's getting its oil changed, you don't have another one. So it's good to have the redundancy on the other truck.
Yeah, I know.
But I think it's important for chiefs and people to realize that, we've heard lots, Zach.
Mhm.
It's an engine first.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's not.
It's-
You have an engine.
Mhm.
There's other things to do that are not engine work. That should be the first priority of a Quint. And the thing about, you kind of, if you want to have a Quint, the proper way to use it is to do the St. Louis Total Quint,
Mhm.
where every truck can do this or that.
Mhm.
So that as when you get all 5 of them show up, if you're saying the first one's doing whatever, blah, 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 they're all interchangeable with each other. Where there's lots of times where you can have a ladder show up first or second or a Quint get put to work as stretch a hose line.
Mhm.
Well, now you need to do
Yeah,
ladder
that's-
work,
yeah.
and now who's doing the ladder work? Because all your ladder guys are doing the other job.
Right.
So it's important for commanders to realize that just because the truck has a pump on it, that doesn't mean it needs to be the primary focus of that truck.
The other problem too is that if you're not planned and practiced, the pumps end up in the way of the ladder.
Yeah.
When it gets on scene, and then we can't
Mhm.
use the ladder anyway.
That's just poor training
You
on
know,
that part,
yeah.
though.
That's
Yeah.
training.
That's
Yeah.
training.
Hey,
State
here in
gym, that
Lacombe,
depends
how
on the
many
area, right?
arguments that we have? Which truck goes first?
Oh, it's
The tower, which is a Quint, and it's a small Quint in size because it's a articulating platform, so it's not as big as a rear-mounted or mid-mounted 100-foot platform. So, and I always argued it should go first if it's a fire versus the engine, and that was sort of always the debate, and I don't know if it still is, but it was for years.
The space in front of the house, just talk about single-family residence, should be always left open for the aerial device.
Right.
And it doesn't really matter which order you pull in. If the pump goes in first or engine,
Go past.
just go past
That's
it,
right.
right? Which is perfect for the first arriving officer.
Yeah,
He gets
exactly.
the Delta, Alpha, and Bravo side
Right.
view, right? So
Right.
it makes the 360 a little bit shorter, and they go past. Do you have to have your hose laid out for that, though?
Right.
Because now you have to stretch back
To the
right.
hydrant
to
or
the hydrant
whatever.
or to the structure itself,
Right,
because you leave
right,
that
with
space
your
open, right?
reconnector.
So I like about New York, they do reverse lays. Basically, the engine stops, drops the guys off, they take the hose off, and the engine goes to the plug.
Well, they're still
Leaves
doing
the
reverse
spa-
lane in New
Yeah,
York.
leaves the
primarily,
space open, leaves the space open
with
for
like
the
a
aerials.
65, 2.5, and a Y, and 2-liter lines.
I
don't think they
don't
use
know about
wise.
why.
Yeah,
I think they
use
might do
wise.
3-inch, 2-inch. I don't know what the hose size is, but
Yeah, they got 2.5-inch for most of those 5 to 6 story walk-ups,
Right.
and then now you got the pump at the hydrant. which is awesome for maximizing
Right.
the flow, right?
Right.
And they can stretch a 3-inch supply line if that ladder needs water.
Mhm.
So it's a cool system, and it works for their environment.
Mhm.
But
The big thing to work even about the engine pulling past there, right, is like where's the majority of your hose? It's on the back of the truck, right? Like we rely so much on the pre-connects, especially in smaller centers here, pre-connects, and then we usually end up when you pull short or you pull in front of it. It's awkward to pull that hose off the back. So pulling in front of or past the house rather gives you that opportunity.
With FDNY, they
Absolutely.
got static hose pads, right? They just
Absolutely.
pull up what they need.
right.
They kind of have that nailed down.
Well, there's a
They're not
guy-
looking at it, and there's a way to calculate how many lengths do you need, and that's what they do.
And
right?
there's a guy on the truck that's his job.
Mhm.
His job is to estimate the stretch and stretch the right amount of lines,
Mhm.
right? Where the nozzle team's going in or whatever. But I mean, there's the old saying, you can stretch a hose, you can't stretch a ladder, right?
Mhm.
So you got to get that ladder in the right spot so that it
Mhm.
can be used. Because if it's not, you can't just add a length. You can't add a length to a ladder, right? It needs to be.
Are we our own worst enemy in that, the small Quints have kind of disappeared. You don't see a lot of 55, 65 foot Quints. I mean, Snorkel's gone. They're out of business. I don't think, so you can't really buy a telesquirt. Well, you can still get Snorkels though, so I'm not sure who's building them.
Is it Chicago?
Rosenbauer bought some for,
And Chicago has that squad system there. Yeah.
65.
Rosenbauer built them for Chicago.
Right. I don't know who built the boom. Because that was owned,
yeah.
that was owned by Snorkel. Snorkel got bought by LaFrance.
Yeah.
France went under eventually, but someone had the rights to build the boom. But we're not seeing a lot of those. Every town used to have a telesquirt or a snorkel or something, and they're kind of gone.
It's probably because they didn't get close enough, and then it's like
Too short.
too short, or
Yeah.
makes no sense having it if we can't even. But that, as you said, Paul, it's a training issue. Right? It's a
Yeah,
Then
staging
you get a
issue. it's a
75, then you
training
start
issue.
putting more and more stuff. But now, of course, we're seeing a big resurgence in the 100-foot single axle Quints. The big P brand is doing them. The E brand is doing them. I suppose the R brand is doing them.
Got double all weight though.
Yeah, that's a
They're
lot of
heavy.
weight,
They're very heavy. They buy typically what's normally called an off-road rear axle that can carry 35 or 34,000 pounds and big tires.
I think the boom on those
But
Chicago
it's-
squads is from Rosenbauer.
Mhm.
I think they built it.
I don't think so.
See, that's
Looks
why
like a snorkel.
that's why I said the European, like a Metz ladder on a North American chassis would be ideal because they're lighter.
But that's
Right.
your Raptor.
And I
That's
hate
the
it.
Rosenbauer
Mhm.
Raptor.
But I hate it because it's something European put on something North American.
Well,
I
it's a
just
Victoria's
don't think
got.
that's
I was chatting with a mechanic at FDIC a couple of years ago, and he was mechanic for Seagrave, and he says a lot of this, the trend he's seeing is like North American chassis and North American trucks, right? And they're putting European components onto it, and they just like European helmets, and it just doesn't mesh, right? It
it's,
doesn't mesh. So
well, I think it will work for a while. I always look at like take a car. You take a Porsche engine, a Porsche, and you put your V8 Dodge engine in there.
absolutely.
It probably works for a little while. And it's fun, but once you get into the trouble, and it's like, oh man, we gotta shut this down.
I mean, it says Rosenbauer AC55 on the thing, but looking at the pictures,
Well,
that
I
is
remember.
very similar to the snorkel.
I remember
design.
when
It
they-
uses the same
Yeah,
parallelogram arms for the leveling the basket and everything.
I remember kind of following on the internet when they were buying those, and because they had old squads because they couldn't get new ones because there
Right.
was no snorkel.
Right.
And I think Rosenbauer built these trucks
They
just
have.
for Chicago.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Mhm.
Well, they've sold a few more now.
yeah, but I think it was
For a
introduced
quick-
and
perfect
whatever.
I mean, it's got a basket hanging off the back, but it's not.
And it seems like for them, it's working so well that they actually get their own trucks designed or built. Right.
Mhm.
So
Right. Well,
there's
yeah,
the
it's
training,
there.
there's the need for it, right? And I think you're right. We are our own worst enemy by not
Making it
training
bigger,
properly.
Making it bigger.
Yeah.
We're always trying to make it bigger. Training is the other issue. But I mean, the what Rosenbauer calls the Raptor
Mhm.
is the Metz aerial on a
Mhm.
North American chassis. That's
Mhm.
what Victoria did that
Yeah.
extreme extension save a few weeks ago. I think I put it on the
Yeah.
on our social media feed.
It's not extreme.
Stuff like
It's
that.
the
No, but
maximum
it was
extension,
at their maximum,
which is perfect for the load
Right.
we were talking about
Yeah,
the difference in
Right, by having a
by
high
having
elevation
the
allow
perfect-
them to extend all the way. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. But again, but you got the mix of the two. Although, I assume since it's one owner, Rosenbauer, it's a single source truck, if you will. Rosenbauer owns Metz. Therefore, they build the boom in Karlsruhe. Like
But Rosenbauer bought, I can't remember the company they bought up. Because it's North American. Like the Rosenbauer of America has nothing to do with Rosenbauer
Well,
Austria.
no, it is.
Right?
It is. It's
It's the
Rosenbauer
same
I'll
company,
tell them
but
that.
it's North American.
They own 50%.
I know Doug doesn't like the cab because they look different, but it's different. Nothing is built in Austria and shipped
The
over
Commander
here.
cab is nice.
Commander's nice. Yeah, that's
the Avenger. I'm just not sold on, but the Commander cab is
Well,
nice.
the Avengers kind of like that step.
It's
into
okay.
That, not the,
Yeah.
the European.
But yeah, so getting off the whole Quint thing. So we may be seeing it swing back to non-cities, maybe buying pumped Quints or aerials without pumps.
Toronto did,
Right.
and now Calgary is. So
Yeah.
it's
But that gets into your specialty argument about the big Bronto Toronto bought, the big tower.
It's a specialty vehicle.
truck,
It's a specialty truck. Yeah.
Just like a ladder is a specialty truck. It's a ladder.
No, ladder.
But it's
is a
almost-
specialty truck.
it's almost the argument's the complete opposite. Is I'm saying that truck's too big for Toronto, and they're taking pumps and stuff off their aerials to make them smaller, to be just ladders. They're getting a
But it's
single.
a special use
Everything's a special use truck. If you want to call an aerial as, that pumper's a special use truck. Everything's a special use truck. If you,
one in your fleet or two or three.
but you don't have
Like
one.
Calgary had four Brontos.
But you're arguing with yourself here. Toronto's ladders that don't have pumps are not special use because there's more than one of them.
how many boats are in Edmonton,
Rush
right?
trucks.
Well,
Yeah,
there's
rush
sure,
Rush trucks.
but they're not all. Everything's not a specialty truck. Hazmat is a specialty. A tower you're going to use once in 40 years in Toronto is a specialty. A true fireboat on an ocean is a specialty. A ladder without a Quint on it, that's not a Quint, is not a specialty. It's a run-of-the-mill pumper and ladder. That's the meat and potatoes of North American firefighting. There's nothing special about them.
Yeah. You may have misunderstood me there.
I guess I did, but it's
The only thing I would like to see smaller pumper trucks with maybe like a 60-foot stick. Because most of the time we use our ladders to surround and drown and squirt water.
Right.
So all you need is the elevated waterway.
Yeah.
It'd be perfect if you have it on the pump, but our pumps are already so heavy and so overloaded with all kinds of
stuff.
crap.
Yeah.
That's on all the other trucks too, right? So it would be nice to go back to have
A
kind of
simpler
way. Yeah.
So something I've been wondering about a lot when we were talking about doing the Quint talk coming up. So I started to think about it a little bit more. I wonder if in small towns, especially in Western Canada, the rescues here are actually taking the place of the truck company, right? Seeing as we don't have companies up here, that's very like an American culture or East Coast culture thing to have up here. We just use a rescue truck in place of that. Because typically they don't have pumps in them, even though now I know they're starting to put pumps in them. But a typical rescue up here would carry all the same tools that a truck would carry, yeah. Unless you're in like a bigger city where it's a TR rescue or it's a water rescue, heavy rescue, right? Most of the rescues in these small towns are carrying, your basic truck tools, right?
I don't even think it's just a small town thing. I think it's like a East Coast / big city American thing / everybody else. Because when you look at, maybe Toronto in Canada is the outlier, but lots like Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton, Regina, Saskatoon, they don't have the engine company to truck company ratio isn't the same as the big city United States. And they have rescues that fill in what we would call quote unquote truck work.
Mm-hmm.
And the small towns, it's probably because they can't afford a big ladder truck and they don't have enough manpower to staff. Lots of it is they're doing vehicle extrication on a rural road, on a highway or whatever. You're not going to be lugging out a big ladder truck out there to go do it. You're going to bring a rescue or whatever. And Calgary and Edmonton, Winnipeg too. If you compare a similar sized city department to the States,
Mhm.
The American one would have way more ladder trucks and way less rescues than we do in Canada. And we show up on a rescue and then do truck work. It's just it's the way it is. But like we also have a rescue dedicated to technical rescue or whatever, or like a couple that also do the tech rescue stuff. But when they're not doing tech rescue stuff, they're doing truck works at fires. So in my personal opinion, I'd love it if we were more engine and truck and the rescue was a specialty thing. But we do that task wise. We just show up on a different truck when we do it.
Just have the pre-assigned tasks. So all our operations are command driven. So whichever truck shows up second gets assigned to whatever the command decides. Right? So and that basically goes back to everybody's trained to the same level. Everybody knows how to do every job. Right? And I think especially for the big cities, it's harder to keep up on the training to be good at it.
Right. Yeah. Especially if you have to be a generalist.
And again, like smaller towns, absolutely you need this. You need more stuff on your engine because it's the only one. Or you go the Quint Concept because now you get an aerial. But if you have the manpower, if you have 16, 24 guys showing up on scene, they should know their job right from the get-go. But that's just not a Canadian thing.
I remember trying to sell ladders to many, Western and Midwestern cities, urban cities, and their complaint with a straight ladder truck or an articulated platform was lack of compartment space, because they run either no pump ladders, straight ladders, or they run tillers. And because of truck work, they are the rescue truck.
Yeah.
Everything that's on that truck. Fans, salvage blankets, wet dry vacs, shoring, rescue tool, it's all on the aerial.
Because their engines are engines. They got hose and that's it. That's all they do.
That's a low hose bed.
Yes.
And it has a lot of hose.
Now we go the other way. Right. Our engines now have everything on there. So it kind of makes that ladder truck that has everything on it with all the compartment space kind of redundant. Right.
I think at the end of the day, you look at the big picture of everything here. It's a culture thing. Really, 100% it is in the fire service. You look at North America, right? The United States, their culture of companies, right? That's how they run their fire services. Up here, sure, we still have engines, we have ladders and whatnot, but we're not big on the actual engine work or the ladder work. And
we're not big on companies. We're big on everybody does everything, which we're turning our people into Quints, where they're jocks of all trades. Absolutely. And then the argument, the rest of that saying is masters of none.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah. So you're not an engine guy where all you're worrying about is engine work. You're not a truck guy where all you're worried about is truck work. Like a Quint, you can do everything, but you give up compartment space or you give up whatever to be able to do both jobs. And to me, in a small town, sure, small fire department, a couple rigs, a Quint might be beneficial. In a big city, urban department, 25, 30, 40 engines, you don't need more pumps on your ladders. You need compartment space, or if you're not going to fill up the compartments, get a shorter, smaller truck.
Make a Boston ladder, right?
It's more maneuverable.
Yeah,
exactly.
You can, what do you call it on the grass?
Beaching.
Beach it. It's not super heavy.
Well,
trying to beach a 100-foot.
Yeah.
Brand
new tow truck.
Quint.
And
I'll tell you what's going to happen to your beach.
Even in an urban environment, downtown, name a city, the jack spread matters. The staging of trucks matters. The small. If you're not going to use the compartment space, get a shorter truck. All that stuff becomes easier to use, right? You don't. And the other thing is, you don't need every single ladder in your city to have a bucket on the end of it.
Yeah, I think Montreal. I think they don't have any Quints in the main.
Could be, yeah. I'm not sure.
Their ladders. We sold them a whole bunch of HP. That's that picture I sent you guys the other day. HP 100 ladder, 13-foot jack spread, 100-foot of reach, no pump, no tank. You're maneuverable. Set it up, drive it anywhere.
Pierce is out there somewhere. They're hearing this conversation and they're just freaking going nuts because that's the ascendant right there. What we just talked about is the ascendant ladder, right? It's short.
Yeah. On those.
Yeah. Montreal does. Yeah. I don't know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, it's the Pierce mid mount, right? It's short. It's a shorter ladder.
Yeah. The mid mount, the rear mount.
Oh yeah, I know, but you want to beach stuff, so somewhere out there.
The Sutton are my favorite. They come with pump and tank and all that stuff. They're mid mount. They're 75 foot. with a bucket. Like they're pretty maneuverable.
But now Sutphin offers a rear mount 75 as well.
Oh yeah, they offer that, and then 100
They had
for
to
it
change,
too, right?
They had to meet the market.
They also build tiller trucks.
Just
Right, Dougie?
well, they did yours
Again, they're building tiller trucks again.
Yeah.
That tillers could be a whole other podcast. Going down the road. Yeah, we can wrap this one up. We all talked about our personal opinion about Quints. I'm not a huge fan of the whole jack of all trades thing for any truck, really. I prefer having dedicated jobs based on the truck you arrive at the call at. So, I don't know, you guys.
And for once, I agree with Doug.
That's twice.
Okay.
That's twice.
Oh,
You agree with me about auto aid and mutual aid, too. So far, for those keeping score at home, it's 2 for Doug and 0 for Paul.
All right.
Awesome. Well, once again, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
And thanks for all your techie work.
Yeah. We'll have a new logo here coming out soon, and perhaps maybe a new intro.
We shall call you Producer Zach.
Producer Zach. There we go.
So, yeah, thanks for listening. Don't forget, follow us on Twitter, Podcast Traffic. Facebook, it's Emergency Traffic Podcast. Instagram, Emergency Traffic Pod. And we'd really appreciate some feedback if anyone's inclined at emergencytrafficpodcast@gmail.com. So that was another Tailboard Talk episode. And we will talk to you later.
Stay safe.
Thanks, guys.